Good morning every day.
Good morning.
Oh,
Would you like it up a little bit?
yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Somebody's always looking out for me. Isn't that a wonderful feeling? That goes along with Anita's song. Someone's always looking out for us. We may not realize it, but that's the case. So, howdy doody. Anybody remember Howdy Doody?
Oh, yes.
So I'm Ann Rea, and I am, as always, feeling blessed and grateful and kind of beside myself this morning because I have the privilege of serving with and being a part of this spiritual family that is so important to me. I was noticing as we were driving here this morning, I love finding the little details that happen in nature. And one of we have lots of trees in our yard right now that are bare, naked. And there was just enough snow to line each branch and each tiny limb at the top with its beauty. And all the way here, I was paying attention. Based on that inspiration, I was paying attention to how the snow falls and how when it's lingering, when it's in that stage where it hasn't yet melted and its signature is still all over growing things. Just as we made the turn onto Old Pecos Trail, I noticed this little adobe wall. It really didn't have a purpose, apparently. That was obvious to me anyway. It was like a little corner wall, and one side was as high as it got, which wasn't very high, and the other side had these 3 little step-down notches. You with me so far? Yeah. And on those notches was this perfect frosting of white. And I'm sure when I was a little girl growing up in California, Southern California in particular, that I would see pictures like that, or worse yet, draw pictures like that, and I had no idea that there were things that really looked like that. Just this perfect little frosting, where most of what you saw is the wall, but then if you're really noticing, there's this little detail that's just there for you to notice. I'm convinced that these details are there for us to notice. Now that may sound a little humanly selfish, but why else? Why else would it be so perfect? Why else? If we look to the tree that's right outside, right behind Deborah and where Stephen is also sitting, we can see where every branch and little tiny limb have just enough snow to be noticeable. It's not big, it's not flashy. So that's not what I'm talking about today. But in a way it is. Because as Patty so beautifully explained, the theme for this month is standing on the edge, and I know of no greater edge for some people than the edge of fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, look what Indiana Jones faced again and again, right? And even he was afraid. So that we feel fear is not the point, because all of our feelings are worthwhile, all of our feelings are important, all of our feelings give us information if we know how to pay attention to them, if we know how to honor them, if we know how to hear or more deeply feel what it is that they are trying so hard to communicate. It may not be true for anybody in this room, or anyone who is online with us this morning, or who sees and hears this talk later. But we definitely know people who automatically go to worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we just? Even if it doesn't include us. And never did. At some point it may have. It may have included us, but maybe no longer. That's possible. And what we've learned along the way, what we've had the opportunity to learn along the way, is that worst case scenario serves a purpose. As long as we don't go too far. Because worst case scenario is just a fork in the road. It's an off-ramp off the freeway. It's another lane. Worst case scenario is just another lane. And if we don't go too far down that lane, down that road, we can realize that hidden in there somewhere is the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. Every single time. They are both, it's like two sides of a coin. They travel together.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, if we are focused on best case scenario, we end up on a different road.
That's right.
So it's like any time we choose, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anytime we choose, every choice we make opens up more options, and some of them can look like worst case scenario, and some of them can look like best case scenario. The thing is that our attention, our focus is required.
Mm-hmm.
Just like seeing the tiny outline on the tree. If we don't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
If we, in looking at and feeling into and hopefully not diving into worst case scenario, we lose sight of best case scenario, it's not worst case scenario's fault.
That's right.
Spirit didn't abandon us. We are not adrift without an anchor. We just feel like we are.
Right.
And the deeper I dive into the experience of fear and our experiences of that and our ideas around that and what we may have been taught or inherited about that and so on. The more I realize that one of the things that we may have been most confused about early on is fear's power. Because here's a news flash. It doesn't have any.
That's right.
It doesn't have any of its own. It just is a feeling. It's just a feeling like any other feeling. And if we were to give it feelings, if we were to give fear a personality like the one that we have that believes all of these things, we might be able to perceive what fear believes it needs to do to protect us. Because fear tends to be about self-protection in one way or another. It also tends to be, notice I said tends to be, because this isn't always the case, but it tends to be about a future that hasn't happened.
Right.
Even if that future is minutes away, or a month away, or a car repair guy away, or halfway around the world away. Fear tends to be about an imagined and unwanted outcome. And the stronger our imagination about it, and the more we don't want it, the stronger it feels.
Yep.
And the more real it feels. So what do we do with all of this? Well, last week we talked about grieving fear and letting it know that we were curious. We were curious about what it had to say. We were curious about what it had to show us. We were curious about what it believes and what it reveals about what we believe. Because that's part of the information that fear carries, is that it reveals to us what we believe. God bless you on the truth. It reveals to us what we believe. I'm going to make it to the gas station. I mean, it isn't always some big thing. But if we start thinking that maybe we won't make it to the gas station, then maybe we won't. Because, as we talk about often, what we focus on tends to show up. Just the way we're focused on it. Like a match, like a mirror image. So, in treating fear with kindness, because my title today is Hello Fear, I'm kindness. In treating fear with kindness, that establishes, as curiosity did, and does that establishes, if you will, a different playing field where we are a participant in this discovery, and we are giving fear room to be. And we are respecting its presence because it doesn't show up for no reason. Now, its reason may not be reasonable. Its reason may be totally fabricated by us or someone else. But if it has shown up, it's a reaction that happens to a thought. So let me give you an example. We hear some information, or should I say misinformation. We hear some misinformation, and we have a visceral reaction. We have fear bubbles up in us because whatever misinformation we heard is frightening to us, even if it in its potential. Now what do? Because as Patty said, it's important to have tools. And we all have them. We already have them. We already have the whole tool chest full of even stuff we don't know how to use yet. In this case, to bring these qualities, to bring curiosity, to bring kindness to fear, gives fear the opportunity to, it's like when a dog or a cat feels safe with you, what do? They roll over. They expose their belly. Come love me. And I'll just lay here until I'm done with you. Well, fear can do that too when we're not so busy being afraid of it. Because when we're afraid of fear, when we're afraid of what we think fear represents, then we're in this dance of fear building on fear, and that dance is hard to change until we change a step. When you're dancing with a partner, let's say you're doing the waltz. If one of you changes a step, then both of you have to change a step, or you're not going to be dancing anymore. Right? You're going to be stumbling around all over the dance floor. So if we change the step and we offer kindness, we're not just offering this open space in us where kindness happens. Because kindness does not come from a closed space. This open space in us where kindness happens. We're not just offering that, we're offering kindness to ourselves. And one of the most important tools we have, actually we have a whole drawer full, maybe two, are tools to use to extend kindness to ourselves. So here we are feeling afraid about something. Why in the world would being kind to myself, would soothing myself, would loving myself be of value? Well, you cannot do any of those things and stay afraid.
That's right.
You cannot be caring for yourself, loving yourself, consciously being kind to yourself, embracing yourself, giving yourself permission. You cannot do those things and stay afraid. You may not have figured out a solution to whatever it is that you thought didn't have one. You may not have figured out the opening or the sign that you're looking for about what to do next, because that's always the question. What's my first next step? Now that I have respected my feelings, respected myself, been gentle with myself, been forgiving with myself, been loving to myself, been embracing of myself, been content with myself, recognized myself, what is my next step? What is my next step to get back in my lane, to feel centered and grounded and safe in my life? Breathe. Thank you, Stephen. Breathe. Now, isn't it interesting? We're breathing anyway. But are we breathing consciously? And if we happen to notice while we're in the middle of entertaining fear as the companion of the moment, we might notice that our shoulders go like this, and we get all tense in here, and we couldn't take a full deep breath if our life depended on it. You can't do it. Bless you. See? We can't do it. So we drop our shoulders. May take some conscious doing, but we drop our shoulders. We know that our breath is life-giving and life-affirming. We know that there's nothing that we have to do to make it happen. We know that we can take any old kind of breath we want to, any old time we want to, because we're breathing anyway, so I highly recommend it. And we can just slow things down. Just slow it all down. Because what we're looking for is what feels true for us. And as true as our imagined, and mind you, unwanted outcome may feel, as true as the potential of that may feel, there are endless versions and visions of truth that feels better, that we can imagine with equal ease once we make room, right? So extending kindness to these feelings that we're having, extending kindness to ourselves, is making room for greater possibilities and for solutions, answers, resolutions to show up that might not have before because we were closed off in fear. Fear does not open us. It makes us smaller. It makes us feel like we don't know what we're doing and we don't know what to do. Now, since I already said that fear has no power of its own, how does it make us feel that way? Because we go there of our own accord. Isn't that amazing? We just go there of our own accord. And many of us have been carrying this pattern or some version of this pattern for our entire lives. And it was carried before we got here by someone who was of influence in our early life. But I say there's a new approach at hand. There's a new way to stay soft and kind to ourselves and our feelings and the fearful thoughts we may be having, and just be able to explore them with an open mind and heart. That's a new way. I have goosebumps. That's a new way. And from there, we can then more readily see what our next step is. Now, for some of you, being kind, being self-loving, being gentle to ourselves, being accepting, being forgiving, because we may even have judgments about our fear. Because, of course, there was a myth somewhere along the way that if you really had your metaphysical act together, you would never be afraid. Yeah, well, you know, you can pick any of the great teachers since ancient history, and they all had moments of fear. But they were able to see beyond it. And they were able to stay free of judgment towards themselves and just love themselves through it. So that is your homework for this week. It's Valentine's. What the heck?